Hey, what's up, y'all? My name's Will. This is part 2 to a video that I posted earlier this week entitled The Coronavirus in Sweden and the Concept of Freedom as Viewed Through the Lens of History. In that video, we discussed what's going on here in Sweden as pertaining to the coronavirus, and we introduced the theme of this video, which is namely the concept of freedom as we move in to the future. So why is this important? Well, I believe that we're standing in the midst of a transition period, a civilizational paradigm shift, if you will. Okay, and the bottom line is this. Okay, we're going to get through this. The question is where are we going to be when we do? Now, the last thing I want to do is be an alarmist and add to all the fear and panic that's going on. Now, these are natural reactions, especially when people are faced with such uncertainty that they are, that this pandemic is bringing to us. But these emotions do not serve you well. Now, you can talk about prepping all you want. Okay, you can go out and you can stockpile all the toilet paper in the world. But if you're not mentally prepared, you're not ready. And that's why I believe it's important that we have these type of conversations, especially if you've never contemplated any of these ideas that we're discussing here, going to be discussing in the future. All right, let's talk about freedom. What comes to mind? Okay, is it Easy Rider, Dennis Hopper on a chopper? Okay. Is it pirates? Blackbeard, yo ho ho, and a bottle of rum, or maybe you're thinking about Vikings, jumping on a ship with your boys and going out plundering and pillaging and going full berserker. All right, I'm with you on all that, but there's more than meets the eye to these stereotypes, especially when it comes to the Vikings. And we're going to come right back to that, and that's going to be one of the main focuses of this video. But first, let's categorize these archetypal concepts of freedom as outlaw freedom. Now, this concept of freedom has been romanticized. Okay, and trust me on this, man. It's not as glamorous as you think. Okay, and I can tell you this as well. Not everybody's cut out for that type of life. That's for sure. What we need here is a definition of freedom that's more universal. And for me, you get that with Jefferson and his work of art, the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. It goes a little something like this. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not only is that profound, it's easily accessible. But where did he come up with this? Okay, well, you might say, well, Will, he was a product of the Enlightenment. Okay, he was heavily influenced by the classical philosophies and government of the Greeks and the Romans. Well, I'd say, yeah, you're right. It's even reflected in the style of architecture that they chose for all the federal buildings. Okay, but what if I told you that was only part of the story? In the previous video, I stood here in the same spot, which represents the transition period from one civilization, as represented by this runestone here, okay, and the civilization that evolved out of it, as represented by the church behind me. Okay. In order to make the analogy about where we stand at today, as we move forward, progressing into a new epoch. The common conception of these people, the runestone, is one of, that they were just barbarians, hell-bent on malignant misdeeds, man. But that's just half the story. It's not even half the story, man. Okay, really what it is a one-dimensional caricature of what these people were really about. So let's look at their form of government. Okay, now it would have been tribal, clannish. Okay, it would have been headed by a chieftain, a petty king, if you will. And but they would have been elected based on merit by their peers, okay, through the main governmental institution, which would have been the All Thing. And this would have been a council made up of all the free men, okay, and they would have voted. That's where they would have made, passed the laws and administered justice, elected the king, sorted things out. And everyone had a voice. Everyone could stand up. I mean, if you were a free man, you had a voice. Not only that, I mean, they were way ahead when it came to women's rights. Okay, women could conduct business. They could divorce their husbands. They were well respected for their, mystical attributes. Healing and spiritual stuff. And hey, they may not have had the ability to vote in the All Thing, but there's depictions of them, at these places. And they would have been carried out when, if you saw some of the prior videos, we're standing out at some of these ancient burial grounds. Man, this is where these things would have taken place. And there's depictions and there's women outside of them, okay? Now, if you think that they weren't being heard, let me tell you something. You don't know nothing about Scandinavian women, because I guarantee they might not have had a vote, but they were being heard. Okay, let me just stress that that this wasn't just a Viking Age thing or a Scandinavian thing for the All Thing. Okay, it was this is an Iron Age phenomenon. Okay, the Germans and all the Scandinavians, even into England. Okay, let's look at England. Okay, how did it get to England? Well, England was originally Celtic. Okay, it would have been inhabited by the Britons, and the Romans, of course, invaded. Hadrian's Wall, from cut everything up from the north. Of course, they would have brought in their culture, their civilization, which, hey, aqueducts and palaces, and not only that, law and the army, the legionnaires, man, or the Roman legions, and they under them, England prospered, very rich, wealthy. It's a very rich land, and trade across the channel. They became very wealthy. But in Rome's decline, the fall of the Roman Empire, they pull back, and about 410, they leave England, and that just kind of left the inhabitants there open. They start getting attacked by the Picts, the Scottish people. You think about Braveheart, and they painted all up in the blue. Well, that was an old Pictish thing. They were all tatted up and all that fun stuff. Interesting little side note tangent. When the English were trying to get people to go over to the New World, to say Virginia and that sort of thing, people were like, "Oh my gosh, the savages!" It was a whole other world. I mean, it was like another planet, basically, and. They hear the stories of the American Indians and that sort of thing, and in these pamphlets they had, these books, and you would see, depictions of the Indians and all their, their traditional garb and that sort of thing. And the way that they sold it to get people to come over, they had pictures of like the Celts or the Picts, and they're all tatted up, and basically, they're saying, "Hey, look at us. We were savages before too. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's a great place. Come on over there." But anyway, so yeah, the Picts are they're beating up on these Romanized Britons, okay, and now they're looking for help, and they call over, and about this time, there's some climate change going up on the peninsula, the Jutland Peninsula. It's the part of Denmark that's attached to continental Europe. Now, there's a couple different theories about this, but I think like the land there, it's very low lying. They lost a lot of the arable land. They would have had a lot of pressure from the Danes. So the Utes and the Angles and the Saxons migrated down. Then they were invited over to help the Romanized Britons fight off the Picts. Once they got there, the story. They were like, "Oh man." They go back over and talk to the boys, and they're like, "Hey man, it's easy pickings over here. Okay, this is what we're looking for. They come back over to England, and next thing you know, well, it's not even England there. It's, the British Isles. Next thing you know, they come over, and it's after a bit of time, it turns into England. I mean, the Angles. That's where we get the English language from. That's where the England gets its name from. The Angles, the Anglo-Saxons. All right. So when they came over, they brought with them all their traditions, their Germanic traditions of the all thing, and the pagan gods are reintroduced and all this, But eventually, that lure of money, from the continent, Christianity. Okay, now you have to realize that Christianity has a powerful allure to the power elite. Okay, not only does now they don't have to be elected. Now they can be ruled by divine right. It consolidates their power. Not only that, if you want to trade with these people, you've got to make treaties and sign charters. And the Christians are not signing these things with pagans. So you got to convert. You want to get into that money, you convert. So they convert over to Christianity. Now, that leads us into the second phase, the second wave of Germanic or Scandinavian invasion into the Viking Age. They come back over, and England's not united. It's a bunch of different little kingdoms. You have like Mercia and East Anglia, etc., etc. So they're not united. The Vikings come over. At first, they're just doing hit and run, kind of smash and grab raids. Man, they're hitting the monasteries, easy targets, and then jumping back in their long ships and out of there, like a little blitzkrieg type thing. And they're out. Okay. Then they realize. Then they come back over with this a big army. And there's actually big parts of England that were under the Dane law, okay? And this is where the pagan traditions were, reinstituted. You have the whole thing and things of this nature, and they got along for a while. And what people don't realize, though, is there was under King Knut, okay? The early 1000s, I believe it was, early 11th century. He was the king of England, okay, as well as king of parts of Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. And it was about a 9-year rule that he had, okay. And after he died, it left a dynastic dispute. Who's going to take over the throne? And basically, you had 3 different people. Okay, you had Harald of England, Harald Hardrada, which means like Harald Hard Times, a hard ruler from Norway, and you had William the Bastard, later to be known as William the Conqueror, from Normandy. Let's set the stage for this, all right? Let's do a little background. Let's start off with Harald Hardrada, man. This guy is one of my favorites. This is going to make this video a little bit long, man, but it's one of my favorite stories, all right? And let it be said, okay, the Viking Age, in my opinion, should be broken into 2. You have the first, the beginning of the Viking era, and as we were discussing earlier, there's no concept of the state. And then you have the later part of the Viking era, and they're becoming Christianized and consolidating kingdoms, and you see the formation of the states of Sweden, Denmark, Norway. Okay, now Harald Hardrada was the son of King Olaf. He's the patron saint of Norway. And he became Christian, and he was consolidating Norway into a state. But up in the north, in the Trondheim area, okay, these people were fiercely independent, and they were not going to give in to the king, period. All right, not without a fight. So King Olaf heads up north to this area called Stiklestad. Okay, great place up there. Did a job up there, built a park. Turned out killer. Actually, one of the guys that worked for the commune, one of the city politicians, he was a really cool guy, and I presented him this idea that I had. I wanted to do some carvings on the outside of the park. One of them for like the King Olaf, and then another one for like the Trondheimers. And like I said, he was cool. He actually had ancestors that fought in the Battle of Stiklestad. on the side of the free men, you know, the Trondheimers. So yeah, I did a carving. I did like an independent cross with some runes around it on one side, and then on the other, I did this knotted, you know, Viking dragon. Turned out really cool. But anyway, the Battle of Stiklestad, man. All right, King Olaf. Like I said, he's consolidating the power, man, and he is up there, and he's going to force these Trondheimers he's going to bend them to his will. They're going to convert over to Christianity and get in line. They're like, nope, we ain't, you know, it ain't happening. So they go up there, and Harald is with him. Okay, he's like 15 at the time. He's going up there to be a man and jump into the battle, but things don't go good at all. Okay, King Olaf is killed. He becomes martyred, and hence he becomes the patron saint. And Harald is severely injured. Okay, there's like some things, and they grab him and they take him off out into the woods to heal. But it is not safe for him there. Okay, not safe at all. So he ends up leaving and goes over to Russia, to the Kievan Rus. Okay, and this is like this whole kingdom, this was started by the Vikings too, and I believe that he takes refuge with Borislav. Okay, now if you're one of these guys, leader of the Russian Vikings, the Rus, it was always kind of a good idea to keep good relations over here, especially with like the Norwegians and the Danes, because you had the Swedes that are right next to them and kind of a threat. So it's like, hey, it's good to keep good relations over. So he shows Harald Hardrada a lot of hospitality, takes care of him, likes the guy. Harald's cool. And but Borislav has this beautiful daughter, and Harald's a bit smitten, and he wants to. He's looking for an avenue to regain his power, and he wants to marry this girl. Borislav is like, man, hold on, son. You want to get with the princess, you got to go out and show you're an earner. She ain't just going with anybody. You got to prove yourself. And that's when, Harald's like, I got this. So he takes on off, and he heads on down to Constantinople, known as Miklagard, to the Vikings. And he becomes the Byzantine's emperor's head of the Vengorian Guard. Okay, this is like an elite force made exclusively of Vikings. And they were like the Praetorian Guard for the emperor. Okay, but Harald, man, he has all kinds of great exploits. He's down fighting, the Bedouins, and fighting in Syria, and and fighting the kings, his enemies within the state and all this. But hey, the Byzantine Empire, man, it is full of intrigue and betrayals and all this, and eventually the guy he's serving for is taken out in a coup. Now Harald, he knows, man, he can smell which way the wind's blowing. All right, he knows it's time to get out. So he packs up, man. He's been there for a while, and he has amassed great riches. So they pack up the long ships, man, and they're gonna beat feet and get out of there. And man, they take off in the night, and there's a big chain that goes across the Bosphorus. All right, and they're in their long ships, man, like this thing right here, man, and they're rowing and rowing. And this is pretty cool if you're a skateboarder, man, because he does like a spine transfer over this thing, over this chain. It's kind of like it's sick. It's like Tom Penny when he does that over the chain into the bank, man. He shut that place down. This is what Harald's doing, man. You can see him now, man, like, row, 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 and they're getting in there, everybody in the back, and they jump up, and they, man, full on pop a wheelie. They manual the long ship, and there's the chain, and they gotta go, boom, and get over, and it's like, hey, everybody up front, and they rock and roll over top of that thing. Hey, once they got over that, man, the one finger salute was flying high. I mean, it's like, woo! He had 3 ships. One of them didn't make it. 2 of them did, though. And then he makes it all the way back up to Norway. A long trip. He consolidates his power. He becomes king in Norway. And he's still ambitious. All right, so, and he's got eyes on the English throne as well. He's got a claim to it. Okay. Now on the other side of the channel, you got William the Bastard, king, or the Duke of Normandy. And hey, D-Day, man, they weren't the first guys that stormed the beaches of Normandy. About a millennia, about 1,100 years before, I'd say about that. Man, yeah, the Vikings are just devastated, doing the same thing to France or Francia that they did to the English. They're popping up every season, hitting monasteries. They attack, they sack, Paris, Lyons, and the French get the Franks, they get so sick of it, man. They're just like, just please stop, okay? We will give you all this land up here, and we will pay you tribute, but just stop beating us up and just keep all your other crazy cousins out of our business. So, yeah, of course they take them up on that, and they become a little more, they're Christianized or Frankified or however you want to say it. They get into all the wealth and the court and all that stuff, but they maintain a lot of their Scandinavian or really martial traditions. So now it's the year 1066. Harald Hardrada makes his move. Okay, he crosses over. He lands in England. He sets up shop around York. It's in the winter though. Okay, and this is typically, or it's becoming winter. Typically, this is not the time. There's a season to warfare back in these times, and winter time, people are hunkered down. Typically, armies aren't out fighting. So he gets over. He's thinking, hey, I'm going to get here. I'll consolidate my power, and in the spring, I'll be ready to make my move. And he knows what the situation is with all the other claimants. And so one day he's just out, they're out hunting. He's out having a good time. He's not expecting anything to happen. But in a brilliant move, Harald of England makes this forced march up to meet him. Okay, and these Anglo-Saxon dudes, they're tough dudes too, man. And they're rocking, he's got like this big, part of his army is full of guys with Dane axes and that sort of thing. And it really, the forced march that they did, you look at what the Germans did going through the Ardennes and surprising the French. And that's basically, it's on parallel with that. It was one of these unprecedented moves that nobody thought that could happen, and he did it. He took Harald Hardrada by total surprise. But Harald Hardrada, like a true Viking, man, he is just like, come on and get it. All right, and there's this, this epic battle at the Stamford Bridge, and one of, Harald Hardrada's, one of his thanes, man, he just goes full berserker mode, just stands on the bridge, and he holds back the whole army, and they're thinking like, man, maybe we can win, we can get away, but he ends up falling. Harald is like, nah, man, come on. I'm going to face this. And he ends up getting shot in the head with an arrow, I believe. But, hey, that he died with his sword in his hand. And I guarantee you this. The Valkyries were fighting over who was going to escort his body back to Valhalla. And I guarantee you that Odin had a warm reception for him. A nice, big old, cold mug of ale when he got there. That's for sure. But anyway. So, Harald Hardrada's out of the picture. Okay, but on the other side of the channel, okay, you got William the Bastard, and he has got, he's got spies. He knows what's going on. He knows that Harald of England has made a move up to meet Harald Hardrada. So he makes his move. He crosses the English Channel. Now Harald of England has to make it all the way back down, keep his army intact. And these aren't regular armies. These people sign up on on conditions, and this is, hey, I'm going to go up here and do this for you. He's got to keep them together, make this other, the march back down to where he came from to meet the threat of William. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out for him. He had the Battle of Hastings, and William the Bastard becomes William the Conqueror. He wins. And when he wins, he he goes about consolidating his power in England by setting up these fortresses, castles. Okay, before this time in England, you didn't have castles. They had like boroughs. You know, like you have in the English word now, like a borough. But these would have been defensive fortifications with like a moat and a stockade and that sort of thing. But they weren't brick and mortar. Okay, William the Conqueror goes on this building campaign and just sets up castles all around England to, so they can project his power and control the country with. All right, now after William's death, there's this succession of different rulers, and none of them really take England that seriously. Okay, they'd rather spend their time back in the royal courts, on mainland Europe, being fancy people, and really just kind of viewed England as a backwater or the boondocks, and a source of revenue that they could just squeeze. Now, and in 1215, I believe it was King John. He was very unpopular, and the English nobility, the barons, rose up against him and forced him to sign a Charter of Rights known as the Magna Carta. Okay. Now, this is essentially the predecessor to the Constitution of the United States. It's also, the bedrock of English common law, the same legal system really that we use today. And Jefferson was well acquainted with this. Okay, he even went so far as to propose that Hengist and Horsa, okay, these were the two legendary figures that led the invasion of the Utes, the Angles, and the Saxons into Britain. Okay, he wanted to make Hengist and Horsa, the two brothers, the seal of the United States of America. Okay, that's how much of a profound impact that they really had on us. And it's really just kind of a shame that, and then post-World War II academia, that this topic is kind of taboo. I don't know why. It just strikes me as odd. But anyway, man, this virus, all right? And this is a big deal, man. This is a benchmark moment in history. And it's going to eclipse 9/11, all right, in its magnitude and its importance. And you know what happened after 9/11, okay? So be wary for what comes after this. Okay, there's a lot of good men and women out there that have fought the good fight to secure our civil liberties. So let's just remember that going forward. Hey, everybody, first things first, stay healthy, stay safe, look after your neighbors, your friends, your family, and let's get through it. All right, I'm out.